women bishops. Laura Baines will have those stories and much more for you at the top of the hour right here on France 24. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're speaking on the day when the city of Goma in the east of Congo has fallen to the hands of rebels. It's caught a lot of people by surprise and put a conflict back on the map that most of the world has paid scant attention to these past years, even though millions of lives have been lost since 1998, what some aid groups call the deadliest conflict since World War II. With us to talk about it are journalist Mélanie Goubet, who's seen the fall of Goma from inside. She is in that city. Also with us is Congolese journalist James Ngumba Muganga, Rwandan writer Benjamin Sehene, and France 24's very own Eba Kalanto. Just before the break, we were talking about the fact that Rwanda being blamed by Kinshasa, by the United Nations, for being the proxies behind the M23 rebel movement. Now, ahead of Tuesday's fall of Goma, it wasn't just the French pointing the finger at the M23's backers, although some, like in the UK, in Europe, in the United States, stopping well shy of pronouncing the R word, Rwanda.
We need all sides to do what they can to roll back the M23 offensive and to protect civilians.
Any support to the M23 in violation of the sanctions regime and the arms embargo should stop. Those who have influence over the rebels must make it their priority to urge an immediate end to the fighting. We're working closely with the UN on timescales for what more action we should take.
Eba Kalanto, we could call up one of the questions that was put on Twitter by Jason Stearns. He said, is this going to all bring greater condemnation or courting of Rwanda? Will Kigali be seen as part of the problem or an essential part of the solution? Here you see the statements by the EU foreign policy chief, by the State Department spokesperson, and they don't say the word Rwanda ever.
I think the time for name-calling and hand-wringing is over. What you're seeing is a very fast-moving humanitarian disaster that's been in the making for more than 20 years. And now what you've got is more than 200,000 people who've just been displaced yet again, going with no place to go. And this in itself can cause more unrest in a region that is so susceptible to political, military, and other humanitarian disasters that we can only imagine of. So right now, I don't know whether now is the time to speak.
Especially when they're all speaking.
They're all speaking at the same time.
At the same time, together around the same table in Kampala.
Exactly. I do think that what is being forgotten here is that there are people walking around in their own country looking for shelter, looking for medical care, looking for a home to call a home. And they've been doing that for more than 5 years. I really do think that at one point, we should all sit down and say that, look, this is a humanitarian disaster. This never has been a post-conflict situation. This has always been a low-level conflict situation in the east of the Congo. And basically, whoever needs to be involved should be involved. Why they should be involved is no longer the reason. And who the blame game right now, it's on the heads of more than 2 million people right now.
All right, a blame game right now, but there is a heavy subtext to all of this. For those who haven't followed it closely, last month there was a leaked UN report that went over the M23 leader's head, accusing directly the Rwandan defense minister of directly masterminding operations. Now on Sunday, the world body's peacekeeping operations sounded fairly definite.
At this stage, what we say is that we are not in a position to confirm whether or not Rwanda was directly involved in those attacks. But I would also say that there are reports that the M23 attacking forces are well equipped and very well supplied. 2 examples: they have night vision equipment, which is precisely what allowed them to launch their offensive at 4 a.m. this morning against the FARDC. They also have, for instance, 120 millimeter mortars which they did not have not so long ago. That is a fact.
Mélanie Goubi, I suppose the statements there by the head of the UN operations, that's high on everyone's minds.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well. Could you repeat the question, please?
I was going to say the head of UN peacekeeping operations saying that they have these rebels have night vision equipments, that they have 120 millimeter mortars, which they didn't have before. That must be high on everyone's mind since the attacks intensified over the weekend.
Yes, absolutely. This raised a lot of questions for people, for the government, and for people in North Kivu. Obviously, it means that it's hard for the army to fight such well-equipped soldiers when the Congolese army itself is not very well equipped. So it's quite an unfair fight in a way, and obviously, it also raised question about Rwanda involvement in the conflict.
And by the way, that leaked UN report doesn't just point the finger at Rwanda. It said also that while Rwandan officials coordinated the creation of the rebel movement as well as its major military operations, Uganda's more subtle support to M23 allowed the rebel group's political branch to operate from within Kampala and boost its external relations.
Yeah, François, just before Melanie says anything right now, I think that one thing we haven't been talking about is the presence of the United Nations in the North Kivu area. They have a mandate, right? Their mandate is to protect the civilian population. And the second mandate is to support government authority and the government army as and when it's there. But then, of course, the government turned tail and ran, didn't it? So what does the UN do? As opposed to saying, yes, there are these fighting forces, the two belligerents, the M23, but there is no more government army to speak of in the North Kivu. So where does that leave the United Nations? The mandate of the United Nations, when things like this does happen, they're just basically there then to observe.
So when the
over.
French foreign minister calls for a boosting of that mandate, what should it be?
But I think the conversation of does it need to be a Chapter 7 mandate, this has been a conversation that's been on as, 13 years, for as long as MONUSCO was MONUC. So this is a conversation that's been dragging its feet and only becomes a burning issue when we see people taking their lives on their heads and running out of town.
Should it be a Chapter 7, the right to use force?
Well, clearly, there's two things. The United Nations is not the Congolese government. There's one thing, that the United Nations is there in support of a government, but if the government and its institutions, its military, then decides they're checking out, what do you do?
You are right I think that you are right, okay? The UN mandate has been reversed over 10 times. You know it. Over 10 times. The first time when MONUC came in Congo, they went with one mandate. And the thing it was being reviewed 3 times. But until now, you are right. What have been doing there? Okay, let me ask you, or just add. In 2010, Rwanda and Congo, they made 2 operations called Kimia and Amani, which means peace in Lingala, peace in Swahili. They have done this kind of thing. What was the result? What the result? And let me tell you that we will not be surprised after 1 year or 6 months, the problem will come back. Because the real position, because when the Rwanda minister said that the Congolese have to know the root causes. What the root causes? Because it's the same things. And we want a dialogue in South Africa. We want a dialogue in Kampala. We want a dialogue in Tanzania.
I'll be a devil's advocate
and you
just
were there,
there,
James.
James.
You were there.
I'll just tell you one thing.
Is there anything news about that?
I think what is news is that we also need to talk about, and I'll just be a little bit provocative here, when you have so many people in a sovereign national territory,
yeah, I know.
you have to ask the question, where is that national sovereign territory to protect its sovereignty?
Right, François, just give me just a minute.
So when it has all the support, it means that there is clearly a need for this sovereign entity
the Congolese
to have to have support.
Yes.
And when will it not need support?
Yes, and
if there's no government authority in North Kivu, and again, I'm trying to be provocative here, but I do think that the time has come to say as it is.
I want to reply. That's right. In Congo, we have just a lack of leadership. We know, all of us, okay? Is that a reason that you people, because in our country, we don't have, no, I'm saying just to others, it's just a debate. People, because we have a lack of leadership, we don't have army, we don't have people educated, well-trained. Is that just a reason that for another country, a neighbor to come and fight us? No,
of course.
It's not a reason. And
but it definitely makes you more vulnerable.
The great question, or the big question is that, since I can make a scene or I can confess.
Another country?
Rwanda. UN report. UN has made over 10 reports made by experts, by media, by NGO. All of them, they recognize that Rwanda is backing rebels in Congo. It's not Congolese people are doing a report. The report are coming from UN. But we have to start by that. The rebels are in Congo. Can you imagine that?
Well, if they get foreign support, why isn't it equivalent to what the Congolese government gets from Angola?
Belgian, can you give me just an answer? How a poor people coming from Tutsi land, we get an army with great weapon, with all material.
No.
Because it's just, Walungu and Goma is just very close to Goma. Okay, tell me.
So Benjamin Saini, your argument is that every side has their own backers, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, the government in Kinshasa has support from Angola, and it has support from France and other countries.
And then?
Yeah, so why shouldn't the rebels have support from foreign countries?
I find it fascinating that when we talk about the Congolese issue, or the North Kivu issue, it's like who did what, when, and whose fault it is. We have it's very, very little that we talk about the people who have no place to go.
Let's talk about those people. Again, the French asking for a beefed up mandate for the UN forces in Eastern Congo, and you can almost hear the locals saying about time.
Kabila abandoned us. What are we going to do? The United Nations peacekeepers, they were there, they saw the M23, and they left with their tanks. They let the M23 enter the airport. It isn't right. Why lie to us?
Melanie Gubi, have you been able to speak to UN representatives this Tuesday?
It's been very difficult to communicate with the UN in the past few days. UN spokespersons were very difficult to reach, and they have given very little explanation of what their troops have been doing to protect the city. I have not seen much action from UN troops on the ground myself. I was on the front line yesterday when the fighting started again, and I could not see a UN tank or UN troops on the front line. And as a matter of fact, they had left just a few minutes before the fight broke out. So it's been quite difficult to understand the UN role in the past few days.
All right, lots of questions over the UN's role. With a beefed up mandate, Melanie Gubi, would there be any evidence that things would be different?
Sorry, can you say that again?
If there was a beefed up mandate for the United Nations forces, would that have changed things from where you are?
If MONUSCO had a stronger mandate?
Yes.
Well, the problem with Goma is that it's a very high density population. So in a way, the fact that neither the Congolese army nor the UN really fought back protected the population because the more fighting, obviously, the more death toll. So it would probably have changed something in Goma being taken or not. But it might not have changed anything, or it might have made things worse for the population in Goma.
All right, so it would have been even more dangerous, perhaps, for the civilian population. But one final question for you, Melanie, on this. Right now, the rebels, from what you've seen, are they staying in town? We know there have been scenes of celebrations in some parts, or are they on the move as they claim to be?
There have been people celebrating in the street, or rather, more than celebrating, I would say, applauding the rebels as they were walking into the town. But it has to be put in context. It's, a few people in the streets, maybe like a few hundred people, and it doesn't mean that the entire city of Goma is cheering to the rebels. It might be some part of the population that is happy to see the rebels, and obviously people are relieved that the fighting is finally over. But it doesn't mean that everyone is happy for the M23 to be in town.
Eba Kalando, so the population wary of what comes next, even though there are those talks taking place.
Absolutely, and I think they've gone through this way too many times before, and a population that is so war-weary and always at the mercy of whoever has the biggest gun, which never seems to be their own government, is something for a citizen of a country that is very hard to bear, especially when they've already paid such a terrible price. They live between a lake with nitrogen oxide, a volcano that can flatten the town, and then God knows, men with guns in the dead of night. Can't be such a cool time to be.
All right, and it's a story, of course, that France 24 will continue to follow. Eba Kalando, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well James Ngumbu Mulanga and Benjamin Sehene. I want to thank as well Mélanie Goubi, who will be continuing to report from us out of Goma. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.